The masses began to regard Kara as a people's hero. A vigilante seeking revenge for the brutal massacre of beloved heroes. Kara seems to be an invincible existence. Compared with the destruction caused by the villain, her revenge is even more crazy. This young girl will accurately kill her target every time she takes action. No one can escape her judgment, and no one can compete with her head-on. From the first time she appeared in the public sight, she has never been defeated again. Any criminal who tries to get rid of her will eventually be beaten into a puddle of minced meat by her extremely powerful iron fist. There will be no more mercy. Perhaps it is true as Kara said, when the super criminals crossed that red line, things were out of the control of the big shots. Some people speculate that Kara is the incarnation of some kind of god, while others say that she is the goddess of revenge created by the sins committed by criminals. But no matter what, everyone knows that this extremely cruel girl was released by the criminals themselves. Monster out. Keep calm. Ladies and gentlemen. Stay calm. In the Hydra stronghold, the originally dark and deserted office was now as lively as a vegetable market. The Red Skull was exhausted both physically and mentally to comfort the other super criminals participating in the video conference. Kara's appearance and actions had stirred up the nerves of these villains more than once. The inhumane massacre put every criminal in a state of danger. Are you kidding? Skeleton. Do you dare to say this in front of that girl? She is massacring us. Massacre. It's all your idea. Now that Deadpool has disappeared, and a lawless and merciless madwoman has appeared, how can you keep us calm? Yes, yes. It's sad. Red Skull crossed his arms and sighed heavily. I have to admit that the strength of that girl is indeed beyond our imagination, but I have arranged for my most trusted allies to deal with her. Don't worry, gentlemen, everything is under control. It better be this way, Skeleton, or I swear, I will drag you to be buried with you. That night, the battle between Kara and King Wanli collapsed 3 small islands, and the monstrous floods caused irreparable damage to the west coast of Eagle Kingdom. According to subsequent statistics, the impact of this battle and the economic losses it caused have reached historical levels. New highs. But unlike Kara, who was having a good time playing outside, Zhang Yijin was leisurely enjoying a beautiful and peaceful time in the Brooklyn villa, as if he didn't care at all about the great changes in the outside world. News about Kara is being reported on TV. Obviously, the deeds of the goddess of vengeance have become the mainstream reporting direction. Almost everyone in the world is paying attention to this girl named Kara. This king of 10,000 powers is really surprisingly strong. I thought this guy had been buried under the sea. I didn't expect that he was secretly subdued by the Red Skull. If Kara hadn't taken action, I really didn't expect that Hydra had such a trump card. Zhang Yi said while sipping tea. Compared with the leisurely Zhang Yi, Moonlight Knight was obviously impatient at this time. He didn't know what Zhang Yi's purpose was. Since he informed the Avengers of Deadpool and the terrifying existence behind him, those heroes they all hid. According to Captain America, they are preparing to conduct a wave of self-examination. Changing one's cognition is extremely terrifying. Anyone whose mind is contaminated will become a time bomb. Therefore, after receiving the intelligence, the hero immediately prepared for inspection. Is it possible for me to be contaminated? You won't know if you don't check, but you'll be shocked if you check. Including Captain America, almost half of the remaining superheroes are more or less contaminated. Some of them have cognitive impairment, some are inexplicably colorblind, and some are even missing memory of a certain period of time. This is just for these heroes with surnames, like those S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. The results of self-examination are even more horrific. The most terrifying thing is that their S.H.I.E.L.D. intelligence stations and mission files have all been invaded by reality and where malicious modifications even erased a large section of mission records. This directly led to a large, historical blank in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files, but the most frightening thing is that no one had discovered such a huge flaw before, not even Nick Fury. After learning these conclusions, the fear of the unknown instantly plunged the heroes into unprecedented uneasiness. Under this situation, they themselves didn't know what to do, let alone take care of the villains who were massacred. But Moonlight Knight is different. He also wants to solve this trouble as soon as possible, but he doesn't know what Zhang Yi's plan is. However, Zhang Yi arranges for Kara to go to fight with the Criminal Alliance, which can easily lead to an even more chaotic situation. And this is what Moon Knight is most worried about. Almost half a month has passed. Are we just like this with nothing to do every day? The Red Skull is not that simple. The power behind him may have great intentions. Kara's actions may make things irreversible. In extraordinary times, extraordinary means must be used. Moon Knight, you should be able to understand this. Zhang Yi moved his eyes from the TV to Moon Knight's face, and then continued. I'm about to know the purpose of that thing. Really? Moonlight Knight's eyes narrowed. Well, otherwise I wouldn't have had to ask Kara to ask for directions. Now that I think about it, all this is really just right. Zhang Yi didn't explain too much. At this time, Zhang Yi's mind kept reminiscing about the original work. In the comics Deadpool massacres the Marvel Universe, the comeback, Deadpool slaughters superheroes with an unstoppable force. Similarly, when he is awakened by Gwen, he will do the opposite. When he slaughtered the villains, he still encountered no resistance. All-powerful villains are like chickens and dogs in front of him. Even warriors with extremely experienced combat experience such as Crossbones and Ninja Master cannot go through 3 rounds in front of Deadpool. This is obviously beyond death. The combat effectiveness that the servant can achieve. At the same time, when Deadpool finally cut off the Red Skull's head, the Red Skull said some interesting words. The age of heroes is over. All of this seems to be the Red Skull's plan. Not only does Deadpool kill the heroes, but also Deadpool kills the villains. Red Skull also expected it. He loudly mocked Deadpool for being unable to remedy all this, and declared that it was Deadpool who ended the world with him. From this point, Zhang Yi vaguely noticed something, but he was not sure yet. Until Miss Time suddenly appeared, she told Zhang Yi that this timeline was undergoing inevitable timeline changes, and the chaotic reality was deviating from the track, heading towards another evolving timeline. And that timeline? It is main universe number 616. Reasonable. Everything makes sense. The answer to why that indescribable chrysalis parasitizes this time, but does not directly destroy and cannibalize this parallel universe, is already very obvious, because the goal of that thing is not this universe at all, it really wants to pollute, is the main world of the Marvel Universe. Unlike other multiverses, the connection between the new and completely different universe number 616 and its parallel branch universes is very close. The reality barrier between the two worlds is very fragile. If you are not careful, creatures from the parallel universe will travel to the main universe. Cosmic things happen. It is precisely because of this that this fragile barrier attracts the terrifying existence from the infinite darkness. The chrysalis did not have the ability to directly pollute the main universe, and it could not even approach the main universe. Therefore, it changed a new idea, that is, to attack the branch parallel universe of the main universe. Soon, a timeline in the period before Civil War II was targeted by it. Through its projection in the spiritual world, that thing spread unparalleled cognitive pollution. Under this twisted thinking, the smarter the person, more susceptible to contamination. And its purpose of polluting this universe is obviously not only to destroy this universe, but also to plot much more, such as, to influence the main world through cognitive pollution. In some of the accessible archives collected by Miss Time, the difference between dimensional invasion and reality invasion is fully recorded. Dimension invasion refers to a battle between different dimensions. When one party fails, its dimension will be swallowed up by the more powerful party. This is also the origin of dimensional war. But reality invasion is different. It can be said to be a battle without gunpowder. To put it simply, reality invasion is to cast a new layer of reality on top of the real world in order to replace reality. Imagine what will happen in the main universe when this reality of the end of superheroes is overlaid on the reality of the main universe. This is not a competition of combat effectiveness, nor is it a confrontation of strategy and wisdom. This is a war that cannot be described, demonstrated, or dealt with. No one will find traces of the enemy, and no one will be able to participate in the war, because the war has ended in another reality, and who can extinguish the war outside reality? When a person who is not dead is considered dead by everyone, including himself, what will become of this person? Will he still remember how to breathe? Reference Green Lantern thinks he is blind, he is really blind. And when this invasion of reality gradually expands, and the impact is slowly fixed, and eventually becomes irreparable, then the Marvel Universe will most likely enter a state of existence in name only. Regarding this incident, the system files only mentioned it briefly and did not record it in detail at all. Perhaps it was because the users of that generation heard about it and had no personal experience. It is also possible that the system files were damaged, so the records were not saved completely. But no matter what, this gave Zhang Yi new inspiration in his mind. Perhaps the goal of the chrysalis from beginning to end is the main Marvel universe, so it reaches out to the parallel universes around it. Although we don't know how terrifying the power of the chrysalis is, based on the current information from the looks of it, the other party is definitely in existence above the level of the multiverse. It is like a virus in the multiverse, constantly infecting and poisoning all multiverses. Its pollution will cover reality, distort consciousness, change cognition, and cause a horrific impact on the timeline of the current universe that is difficult to repair. At the same time, its origin is also extremely mysterious. According to Zhang Yi's guess, it is likely to be born from the upper narrator, or it may be born from the dark multiverse corresponding to the light multiverse, but no matter where it comes from, its harms are extremely terrifying. Therefore, we must not let that thing affect other worlds. Let alone let it pollute the main universe. Thinking of this, Zhang Yi closed his eyes, took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. An invisible and huge pressure enveloped Zhang Yi. He did not expect that he had just saved a universe that was about to be destroyed, and that he would soon have to save another universe, and it was also a terrifying incident related to the crisis of the multiverse. Under the influence of Chrysalis, this parallel universe has obviously reached a state of isolation and helplessness. It took advantage of the moment when many dimensions deviated from the real world and affected the entire timeline, causing all those dimensions to disappear from the world. Outside. If the real world and multiple dimensions are like a row of flying geese, then the real world at this time is the one shot down by the hunter. It will sink into the endless darkness, deviate from the original prescribed trajectory, and then directly bumping into Marvel's 616 main universe. Be the source of all destruction. And this is why the gods cut off the connection with reality, and Mephisto's contract cannot keep running, because those dimensions can no longer communicate with the real world. In the final analysis, it is. There are no reinforcements, Moon Knight sighed. We can only rely on ourselves to fight this battle. If we win, no one will know how much we have paid. If we lose, many universes will be affected. Why, are you scared? Zhang Yi said with a smile. Hearing this, Moonlight Knight smiled bitterly and shook his head. How could I be afraid? I'm already dead. I just want to know, since you already know the other party's purpose, why do you still let Kara kill those super criminals? They should be able to help in this war. Are you busy? Zhang Yi took a sip of tea and stared blankly at Kara's figure on the TV. At this time, the TV screen was showing a scene of Kara floating in mid-air, staring at the corpse of King Wanli. After a pause, Zhang Yi spoke. The other party can change cognition and modify reality, but there is one thing it cannot control, and that is logic. I have confirmed this in Carolina's spiritual world before. The realm of that thing is too high, and it obviously cannot understand ants like humans. Level of logical thinking. But there is no way. The world is originally formed by the logic of intelligent creatures. In a deep mountain forest, a tree falls. Does it make a sound? It was made, but no one heard it, so there is no way to prove that it made a sound. Then, if the tree fell, it made no sound. Since the reality it wants to cover is that Deadpool massacred all superheroes under the brainwashing of a group of super criminals, and then killed all the villains for revenge to weaken the defense of the main world. Well, I'll let Kara, a Kryptonian who doesn't exist in the main universe, complete all of this. I want to see how round it is. Zhang Yi's move can be said to be a blow to the bottom of the pot. Of course, this move is also extremely dangerous, because this move is likely to cause stress to the strange being. But it has to be said that this method did have an effect in a certain sense. According to Miss Time's real-time observations, as the influence of Kara's massacre became more and more important, the speed of this parallel universe's deviation from the orbit gradually slowed down. It may be the repulsive effect between different universes. After Kara appeared, the similarity between this universe and the main universe was greatly weakened, resulting in a repulsive force between different universes, causing this universe to collide with the main universe. The speed keeps decreasing. But that thing is still there, and we still can't get rid of him. Moonlight Knight said. Even if we can avoid harming other parallel universes, what should we do about this universe? Mark, this is just a move. I have a way to solve this big trouble. At the same time, I can also restore everything to the way it was before. As he spoke, Zhang Yi fell silent, and he stared deeply. Looking at Moon Knight is like looking at an old friend. Just what? Moonlight Knight felt uncomfortable with Zhang Yi's eyes. He always felt that Zhang Yi was hiding something from him. Nothing. Zhang Yi shook his head and continued. But one thing you said is right. We really can't continue doing nothing like this. The time is almost up and we should start taking action. Zhang Yi turned off the TV and poured the last tea into the trash can. He stood up, and the Moon Knight beside him also stood up. What should we do? Seeing Zhang Yi taking action, Moonlight Knight asked quickly. It's not us, it's you. Zhang Yi said with a serious expression. I have informed Pietro, John, and Carolina that you are going to do a very dangerous thing next. I can't guarantee whether you can come back alive, but I'll go. Moonlight Knight didn't hesitate at all. I know you won't refuse. Zhang Yi smiled. But I hope you can understand the importance of this mission. Tell me about the mission. I know that Kara is just a bait for you to attract the attention of everyone and that existence. I am still wondering when you are going to secretly assassinate Chen Sung. Moonlight Knight responded. As expected of an intelligent superhero, Moonlight Knight always looks at various things with a sense of humor. This may be a tacit understanding between smart people. Sometimes Zhang Yi doesn't need to say it clearly, and Moonlight Knight can understand it. Deep meaning. After a pause, Zhang Yi said. It is precisely because of the importance of this mission that I have to wait until Carolina's body is fully recovered and Pietro's prosthetic limbs are installed. With one more combat power, you will have more protection during this trip. Pietro's prosthetic limb was assembled by John. Since the heroes of the Avengers were in a huge cognitive crisis at the moment, Zhang Yi retreated and focused on the villains. After Kara killed Baron Zemo, Murdoch and others, many of their laboratories and scientific personnel were left without owners, and this also gave Zhang-Yi and others an opportunity to take advantage of it. With the help of these guys, it will be no problem to create a free-moving mechanical prosthesis for Pietro. Of course, the material of the prosthetic limb must be chosen from the best. For this point, Pietro would like to thank Baron Zemo. That guy keeps a large amount of vibranium in his secret warehouse. This top-notch metal is already very popular in the Marvel Universe. Excellent material. What is our goal? Sensing Zhang Yi's seriousness, Moonlight Knight frowned slightly and asked. It's to bring back the Punisher and Doctor Strange. Zhang Yi said calmly. Punisher? Doctor Strange? Moon Knight frowned, thinking about the two names in his mind. A new lack of thinking struck again, and Moonlight Knight suddenly burst out with a nameless anger. He had had enough of this situation where his cognition was changed every moment. At the same time, this anger also came from his powerlessness. Of fear. You don't remember them, right? Zhang Yi stared at Moon Knight. Distorted memories came to mind, and Moon Knight only remembered that he was visited by Nick Fury and was assigned to investigate the deaths of many superheroes. Later, more people joined the team. He remembers his conversations with Cable in Mexico, his fight with Kate Bishop at the Fantastic Four mansion, and the time they went to Deadpool's safe house together to investigate clues. Later, Misty Knight suggested that everyone work in groups. Kate and Jessica, the street heroes, would work together, and Cable and Misty Knight, the two cyborgs, would work together. In the end, he was the only one left. No problem. He arranged for Gwen to secretly sneak into the Red Skull's headquarters. He also listened to the information page sent by Deadpool to the Guardians of the Galaxy. Next, he saw Zhang-Yi in the forest where the Guardians of the Galaxy were buried. Thinking of this, Moonlight Knight raised his head, looked at Zhang-Yi helplessly, and sighed heavily. I didn't go to see you alone, right? There was another person with me at that time, and the group operation will not separate a single person. Yes. Zhang-Yi nodded, then patted Moon Knight on the shoulder. I can't blame you. Doctor Strange is the supreme mage on Earth. Although he is lonely now, he is still one of the highest combat powers in the world. It is precisely because of this that the impact of that thing on the Supreme Sanctuary will be greater. Big. It may be that the Punisher awakened Doctor Strange, causing the trap that the being stayed with Doctor Strange to play a role. Now, strictly speaking, the Supreme Sanctuary is outside reality, and it is removed from this reality. It was erased, or covered. That's why I forgot about the two of them. No, I still have an impression of Doctor Strange and Stephen Strange. I still remember him. Thinking of this, Moonlight Knight did not relax, but became even more vigilant. Don't underestimate the wizard. Zhang-Yi smiled. They are still fighting, they have not given up, they are still contending with the unspeakable existence in the cracks of reality, and this is also the purpose of your trip. I understand. Moonlight Knight clenched his fists and nodded heavily. Zhang-Yi took out a playing card from his arms and slowly handed it to Moonlight Knight. Moonlight Knight picked up the playing card and turned it over to see a red clown printed on the card. This card will lead you to find the cracks in reality, and at the same time, it will also help you at critical moments. If you succeed, we may be able to solve this trouble. Putting the playing cards close to his body in his inner pocket, Moon Knight left in a hurry with a solemn expression. Zhang-Yi was the only one left in the house. He stood quietly, staring in the direction where Moon Knight left. After a long time, Zhang-Yi sighed quietly. This method will work, right? Standing in the house, Zhang-Yi spoke slowly, alone, as if talking to himself. After the words fell, the room fell into an atmosphere of silence again, but this silence did not last long. In just a few breaths, Mistime jumped out of the air. There is no file record, so we can't be sure yet, but this is the best method so far, isn't it? Mistime stood on Zhang-Yi's shoulder and said with a smile. Perhaps because he was infected by Mistime's smile, or perhaps because he had confidence in this plan, Zhang-Yi also smiled lightly and nodded. Yeah, this is the best way, at least for the multiverse. One person fell silent for an hour, calmly looking at the sunset outside the window, just like when they first arrived in this universe, they were in the same position in the same sunset. However, everything is different. After a moment of silence, Zhang-Yi asked. Have you determined the specific timeline anchor point? It has been determined. Although there is not enough time to record all the files of this timeline, I have determined the historical moment in this timeline that has not been contaminated. Mistime replied quickly. According to your plan, if we travel to that time and change history, we may be able to create a fulcrum to split this timeline, causing it to have a fork in the road at that moment, giving birth to two completely different parallel universes. One is contaminated, and one is not contaminated. Yes, this is the best solution that Zhang-Yi came up with. Since the pollution in this universe cannot be eliminated, then he should do the opposite and tear the universe in half and keep one of the worlds that is not polluted. It was the weird chrysalis that reminded Zhang-Yi. Since the other party's purpose is to invade the reality and cover the reality of another main universe that has not yet been affected with a contaminated reality, then he can also use this to destroy the entire universe. The reality of what has happened is ripped away from this universe. Thinking of this, Zhang-Yi asked Miss Time to secretly record this universe. Fortunately, Miss Time was of a higher class, and her records of this universe did not attract anyone's attention. Even the parasitic existence on the timeline did not find this either. After paying enough price, Miss Time finally found the absolute time anchor. It requires a lot of power, right? Zhang Yi murmured. 30%, it's not much, but we can't guarantee the safety of the parallel universe. It requires too much power. I can't help you in this matter. Miss Time shook her head, but she quickly said. Maybe magical energy can. Perhaps, but to complete such a grand magic, my ability alone is far from enough. Zhang Yi fixed his eyes on the sunset, silently watching it go down on the horizon little by little. Splitting the timeline is by no means an easy task. After all, Zhang Yi had just experienced a split flashpoint universe, so he was even more careful about modifying the timeline. If you want to complete this plan, you must find uncontaminated history. Originally, Zhang Yi was worried that that thing was parasitic on the timeline and might contaminate the entire timeline. But what surprised Zhang Yi was that instead of polluting history, that thing polluted the future. Whether it is the cognitive pollution of reality or the killing of Spider-Man 2099 from the future, that indescribable existence has no intention of getting involved in a history that has already happened. It does not even cast its eyes on history. Zhang Yi was very confused about its behavior, but soon he understood the other party's purpose. Because the ultimate goal of that thing is the main universe, and the layer of reality it wants to cover is also the future reality of the main universe, so in order to do this better, it will not modify any previous history at all. Make the integration of the realities of the two worlds more convenient. Don't forget, what is the history of the new and alien universe? That's Secret Wars 2015. The moment a new and completely different main universe is born, parallel universes based on it will be born one by one. This history is the foundation and something that must not be affected, because once history is contaminated, then this history will be the timeline will not be accepted by the main universe. And in this way, the purpose of the chrysalis would not be accomplished, so basically, if it weren't for that thing's big plan, it wouldn't have left such a big flaw for Zhang Yi to discover. Therefore, as long as you can find a way to travel back to that unpolluted history, and then change the development of history to create a new timeline, then, in a sense, you can be considered to have saved this path from destruction. The universe. However, this move is easier said than done, but it is much more difficult to actually do it. Unlike the Flash's crude modification of the timeline, in order to make the new timeline relatively safer, Zhang Yi must use more powerful power to control the stability of the timeline. In other words, Zhang Yi does not want to change the development of this universe, because that can easily lead to the flashpoint paradox. If there are no heroes that should be there, it will also have a considerable impact on the future development of this universe. Zhang Yi's goal is to copy and paste this universe, but the villains in this universe will not have the idea of brainwashing Deadpool, that's all. And the energy required for this is quite terrifying. Even if Zhang Yi holds an entire ruined universe, it is far from enough. Therefore, this is also a difficult point for Zhang Yi. Perhaps, if the great powers existing in this universe, such as the Cosmic Cube, Infinity Stones and other transcendent cosmic treasures, are used, Zhang Yi may be able to accomplish this ambitious goal. But things are not that easy. After all, the chrysalis parasitizing the timeline is still there. The other party may not bother to carefully look at the ants in this universe, but the other party is not a fool either. Its eyes at the moment should be on Kara, Doctor Strange and others, but once Zhang Yi takes the initiative to touch those powerful affairs in this universe, it will definitely attract the attention of that thing. At that time, all Zhang Yi's plans will be ruined. When things have developed to this point, it can be considered that Zhang Yi hid it well and was not noticed. But if Zhang Yi is discovered by that entity, then his plan will naturally be known to the other party. At that time, if that thing gives up, invade the main universe and in turn pollute the history of this universe. Then, in this situation where both the jade and the stone are destroyed, Zhang Yi no longer has any hope of saving the universe. Have you thought of a good idea? Miss Time blinked. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked. Can the two anchor points of limbo still be observed? Of course. Although these dimensions are separated, as long as the anchor point is recorded, it will always be under the observation of the time controller. That's great. Zhang Yi raised the corner of his mouth. Open the portal. I'm going to flip the table. On the red earth, the spiderweb-like cracks produced by the dry and cracked earth extend infinitely to the end of the line of sight, and green poisonous gas visible to the naked eye floats among them, surging out along with the poison flowing on the ground. The wails of countless dead souls and the roars of unknown creatures echoed in the sky, adding a little noise to this underworld world. Stepping out of the portal, Zhang Yi was clearly aware of the coldness coming from all directions, just like the northeast without heating in the cold winter months. Every breath he exhaled turned into crystals and dispersed in the air. The disgusting smell filled Zhang Yi's nostrils. Looking around, Zhang Yi knew that the toxins here had already reached fatal levels. If it weren't for the support of his magic, it would be impossible for an ordinary person's body to survive. Can withstand the environment here. How should I put it? It is indeed the border of hell. Just one glance and the atmosphere is full. Zhang Yi kept observing the surrounding environment with the help of the dim light that came from nowhere. This was the first time in his 2 lifetimes that he came to the legendary hell in person. Even though this was just the border dimension of hell, the environment that was completely different from the real world still made Zhang Yi find it very spectacular. I don't know if it was because the anchor point was too far away, but no demons appeared in Zhang Yi's sight. Even when Zhang Yi opened the wizard's eyes, the surroundings were still desolate, as if there were no demons at all. Intelligent creatures. The only thing Zhang Yi could see were the fragments of the unconscious souls. The most precious things in their souls had been carved up by the demons. In the end, only the negative consciousness was left scattered here, like dandelions. Wandering in the wilderness. These things are harmless to native creatures, but they are still very harmful to creatures in other material realms. For example, if ordinary people come into contact with these things, they will be affected by negative energy, which may cause a minor illness or even whispering thoughts will occur. But with the support of magical energy, these negative energies cannot get close to Zhang Yi, which also gives Zhang Yi a good opportunity to observe them. Zhang Yi is not in a hurry. Having set a time anchor, he has plenty of leisure time to explore here. He believed that the first moment he came to this dimension, he had been discovered by the Hell Lord in charge here. Instead of trying to find the other person yourself, it would be better to just wait quietly for the other person to come to you. It depends on who is more patient between the 2 parties. Sure enough, not long after, a man's voice sounded from behind Zhang Yi. Look who this is, a lost wizard. The fish is hooked. Zhang Yi smiled slightly. It seemed that the legendary Mephisto was not as patient as he expected. Looking back, I saw a middle-aged man in a red suit standing there at some point. The man was very handsome and even wearing a tie. His appearance at the moment did not match the surrounding environment and was even a bit contrary. But for some reason, this originally very different scene seemed very suitable in Zhang Yi's eyes, as if the other person should be dressed like this and should appear here without any problems. After keenly noticing that something was wrong, Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh after thinking for a moment. This must be the strength of the Dimension Lord. The other party has obviously become one with this dimension. No matter what the other party does, everything that is wrong is reasonable here. Mephisto? Zhang Yi said calmly. It's me. The man nodded. When Zhang Yi was observing Mephisto, Mephisto was also looking at Zhang Yi. Mephisto doesn't care about those human wizards who steal the magical energy of Hell's border, because at his level, he has transcended the mundane world. In his eyes, ordinary wizard wars and magic wars are just trivial fights. It was so noisy that he didn't even bother to pay too much attention. But at this moment, facing a wizard who could freely enter and exit the dimension of hell, Mephisto obviously couldn't sit still. Mephisto still understands this very well in a place lying on his side. Being like this who directly enters his own domain without saying hello is undoubtedly a signal to launch a dimensional invasion. However, the moment he saw Zhang Yi, Mephisto instinctively sensed a hint of threat. This is not to say that Zhang Yi can threaten Mephisto's ability again, but the aura or rules exuded by Zhang Yi make Mephisto a little uncomfortable. You don't belong to this world, there is something else in you. Mephisto Wei frowned, as if he was recalling where he had noticed this aura. I am indeed not inferior here, nor do I belong to this universe. Strictly speaking, I do not belong to any universe. Zhang Yi replied calmly. Then, what is your purpose for suddenly offending my territory? Without recalling it, Mephisto stopped thinking and looked at Zhang Yi with interest. You are the demon lord, and this is the border of hell. What else can I do as a foreign wizard coming here? Zhang Yi did not answer directly, but asked with a chuckle. Seeing Zhang Yi who was completely free of any nervousness, Mephisto became even more interested. Are you here to make a deal with me? Hearing this, Zhang Yi nodded heavily. Big deal. It's interesting. I can feel the energy residue of at least 4 worlds in you. I'm curious as to what happened to make a capable guy like you come to me, a demon, for help. Mephisto's yellow eyes stared at Zhang Yi and sneered. When Zhang Yi saw this, he didn't talk nonsense. He raised his hand and waved, and green magical energy jumped at his fingertips. Then, a beautiful box appeared in Zhang Yi's hand. This thing was the one that sealed Deadpool's head. The magic box. Mephisto originally had a sarcastic smile on his face, but when he saw the box, the smile on his face froze instantly, and then a murderous intent flashed in Mephisto's eyes. It seems you know what this thing represents. Although Mephisto's expression flashed away, it was still captured by Zhang Yi. Don't worry, this is a projection. The energy of that thing is not enough to pass through the reality barrier and affect this place. Humph. Mephisto's teeth rubbed slightly, making a harsh sound. You should be glad that the hell dimension has been separated from the real world. Otherwise, let alone the projection, even talking about it would be contaminated by that thing. As expected, you know the origin of this thing. Zhang Yi paused, and then directly dispersed the magic projection. Can you explain it to me? There's nothing to talk about. You're not welcome here, get out. As soon as Mephisto changed from his elegant state, he didn't even bother to maintain his current appearance. In the blink of an eye, Mephisto grew 2 meters taller and transformed into a huge red devil. But facing the somewhat angry Mephisto, Zhang Yi didn't have the slightest fear. In other words, with the help of the time controller, Zhang Yi knew that Mephisto could not threaten his life at all. Under this situation, although Zhang Yi was always wary of Mephisto, he still remained calm on the surface. Let's talk about it. Since you know this thing, you should also know how terrible the harm of this thing is. If left unchecked, the entire universe will be in crisis. Does it have anything to do with me? Mephisto sneered. I have witnessed the end of reality, and I have experienced the feeling of nothingness in consciousness. I know more about the crisis of the multiverse than you, wizard. But things are different this time. To put it in words that I have experienced, it is out of control. I have seen the scene of that thing swallowing up the multiverse. Stars fall and everything dies. I think that time has really come, even an immortal existence like you can't survive, right? After taking a deep look at Zhang Yi, Mephisto suddenly realized that this wizard was more dangerous than he thought. You can find me here, so it proves that you should have encountered that thing, but you are not contaminated. How did you do that? Mephisto suddenly asked. Maybe that thing didn't notice me. Its target is the main universe, and the matter it observes is also born based on the cornerstone of the main universe. I, the outsider, is not among them. Zhang Yihui wrote. Hearing this, Mephisto was silent for a moment, finally recognizing Zhang Yi's words. After a while, he spoke. That thing has a deformed thinking, different from any matter, and different from any consciousness. It was born in the void and originated from the end. Seeing that Zhang Yi wanted to say something, Mephisto waved his hand, interrupted Zhang Yi's question, and continued. I know what you want to ask, but I don't know the origin of that thing, even less than you know. If you are here to seek my help, then I am powerless. I can only give you the only advice, run as far as possible. Listening to Mephisto's narration, Zhang Yi couldn't help but frown. He originally thought that thing was an advanced creation that transcended the reality of the universe, but from Mephisto's point of view, it had something to do with that thing. Everything became obscure again. The somewhat clear thoughts in the past have now become a mess. Even Zhang Yi himself is a little unsure about the status of the existence of that thing at this time. He even has questions about whether he should continue to intervene in this matter. Doubt. But soon, Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief and regained his composure. Raising his head and looking at Mephisto with a solemn face, Zhang Yi spoke again. Actually, I have already thought of a way to solve this matter, but to complete this matter, my power alone is far from enough. I also need the help of other beings who control the power of the entire dimension. Are you crazy? Mephisto couldn't believe it. He looked at Zhang Yi like he was looking at a cultist who had fallen into endless madness. Don't you understand? That thing comes from a world beyond destruction. If you touch that thing rashly, you will become a part of that thing. I'm not crazy, and I don't want to confront it head-on. The pollution of that thing is more terrifying than I imagined, but I discovered a loophole in its actions. It polluted the timeline, but it did not pollute history. If I have enough power, I can copy a new timeline out of thin air. You still say you're not crazy? Mephisto interrupted Zhang Yi and couldn't help but say. It's not as easy to modify history as you think, let alone create a parallel universe that is the same as the original timeline. But this method is feasible, right? Zhang Yi said. Mephisto was stunned. He looked into Zhang Yi's eyes, and for a moment he didn't know what to say, because he realized that the wizard in front of him was serious. In the hellish border with howling wind, the atmosphere between Zhang Yi and Mephisto became a little subtle at this moment. Zhang Yi was silent for a while, and then smiled. Just as Mephisto could see through him, Zhang Yi also got the answer he wanted to know most from Mephisto's reaction. The two fell into a tacit silence. After a long time, Mephisto spoke, breaking the silence. What benefits do I get? Hearing this, Zhang Yishuan's heart gradually relaxed. In order to weaken the rejection of the main world, that thing focused its attention mainly on the earth. This also means that its main pollution is concentrated near the earth. After it is completed, the entire timeline and all unpolluted souls will. What's the price? Are you really willing to go out of your way to save those people? Why did you just hand over their souls to me? Mephisto murmured. It doesn't matter, this reality can no longer be saved, but they will live well in another timeline. Zhang Yi said lightly. Then, can they still be considered them? Mephisto showed a sarcastic smile. Seeing Zhang Yi didn't answer, Mephisto continued. To the people in that new world, you are nothing. No one will thank you for saving them, and no one will even remember you. But in the original world, the people you come into contact with, the friends you make, everyone will die, according to your plan. In their knowledge. Mephisto pointed at the sky. It's not weird beings spreading pollution that will destroy the world. But you, the outsider. It doesn't matter. Zhang Yi spoke. He did not fall into inner struggle as Mephisto expected, but was unusually calm. I don't care about anyone's misunderstanding of me, and I don't bother to defend myself. I want to save this universe because I want to do this, and that's it. Hee 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 ha 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 ha. Mephisto laughed a laugh that was not only mocking but also sarcastic. Then he put away his smile, his face gradually became serious, and he said seriously. The deal is established, but it's not enough. To complete the plan you mentioned, we have to recruit at least one more Dimension Lord. I know. Zhang Yi nodded, then tilted his head slightly towards Mephisto. It happens that I have another security door key to Hell's Edge. Do you want to accompany me to check on the door?